Bien, buenos días. Rich, where's the rest of the clan? All right, okay. Bien. Vamos a tener la primera diapositiva, por favor. Oh, very good. Okay, so me pidieron que diera esta presentación en inglés, Rich, because we're going to be live streaming to the American and to the global partners in IBC. So the talk is called Setting the Record Straight. And we've been talking back and forth with some of our colleagues of ASMBS and international colleagues about international accreditation and certification standards. Thank you. Entonces, perfecto. So it all looks nice and pretty when you see it online, but health tourism has recently changed from a positive, sometimes to a negative connotation. And that's something that's up and coming and very well known around the world. So let's refer to it as global bariatric healthcare when it's specific about bariatric healthcare, and it definitely goes beyond borders. We're a center that's dedicated our lives, basically my practice, the past 20 years has been dedicated to the traveling patient. Our demographics, a little small here, but 99% of my patients come from the US and Canada. In March, one of our patients is patient number 21,000. So we've seen this for so many years. And one of the most important things is there's a commitment not only to the patient population, but to our colleagues internationally. And that's why we put all of the bells and whistles that we can on our institutions and on our program. So we're a Joint Commission accredited hospital, standalone bariatric center. We've got centers of excellence, the Mexican certification, but ultimately this is out of respect to our colleagues internationally and of course to our patients. So the common concern, the universal concern is basically quality and safety. Everybody's looking for it, but in fact there's let's say a huge problem for the one-time consumer, let's call them. A patient that is looking for surgery is going to be a one-time consumer. So they can't be experts at purchasing a product or a service. So usually they're mesmerized by different offers online when they're traveling outside their country. Why do patients travel? Well, they travel because the timeliness of care, the availability of the care, patient preference for a specific provider or a geographical location, and affordability of care. That last one is going to be important to talk about. There's a lot of centers offering service. There's a lot of demand for the service. We're talking specifically about bariatric surgery. And something interesting, let's call it a service. Let's not get into the technical lingo of medical terms, and let's just talk about the laws of supply and demand. There's a higher demand for the procedure, and there's obviously a supply in response to that. Now, obviously, that law responds to an economic incentive, and that economic incentive is not only to the patient when they're searching for better prices elsewhere, it's also to the provider. So providers are opening up shops left and right. Why? Because there's a market for that specific service. The unfortunate fact is that in general, the general rule, and we've spoken about that in a couple of days before, is that especially the standalone centers, we understand in the US and abroad, all these health tourism centers are competing with price. And obviously, quality and safety is not their priority. And quality and safety is difficult to measure, in fact. ¿No me da la siguiente diapositiva? ¿La que sigue? Okay. So what we did is we did an analysis of what's available online as guidelines for the traveling patient. And the US has emitted, since 2008, through several associations and societies and colleges their statements, position statements, or even resources for the traveling patient. 2008, the American Medical Association published their guidelines, and then again in 2018 they renewed them. In 2009, the American College of Surgeons had a statement on travel. 2011, the ASMBS had a position statement published, and the CDC published in 2016 resources for travelers, and then republished actual new recommendations after the infections locally. Next slide, please. All the statements agree that they recognize the patient's right to travel outside of their country for health care. They also recognize that it must be voluntary because there are institutions that are obligating patients to go outside their country because it's cheaper for the payer. They recommend that prior to travel, patients arrange local aftercare, that they research the physician and the licensing of the facility, and the accreditations as well as outcomes. They also recommend that the patient understand fully the risks that are involved not only to the procedure itself, but to traveling outside and returning home. They all suggest that there should be agreements in writing, not just in what the scope of the treatment is going to be, but the complications and what's covered under that treatment agreement. They understand that arrival and departure information is extremely important for the treating physician outside the country, so medical records and prescriptions both ways should be issued. And all of these statements mention the accreditation by Joint Commission as the standard of quality and patient safety when going abroad. Now, if we were to put a list right now, it would end up being facility accreditation, document and board certification of the physician, informed consent policies, standards for privacy and confidentiality, follow-up care coverage, and risks before, during, and after surgery. The problem is that these are not bariatric specific. And though this is the ASMBS paper Richard Peterson is going to be talking about, I'm just going to present this small quote from it, 2011, where it says, there are no specific guidelines or recommendations in place regarding global bariatric health care. There are, however, unique risks associated with bariatric surgery that must be considered. So with understanding this, I'm trying to set the record straight, especially to our colleagues internationally, that there are standards of care in Mexico. And we're going to talk about the surgeon and the qualifications and the accreditations that surgeon can have, what the facility can have by law in Mexico, and then we're going to go with the specifics that are bariatric specific. So the surgeon gets a medical license, a medical title, I'm sorry, because he studied medicine, then he did a specialty, so he gets a second title. But then there's the licensing. The licensing is state, federal, and it's particular to general surgery and or a specialty. So there you go, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 papers already. Then there's the board certification. The board certification is particular to general surgery, but there's a new board certification that's been out several years that is the bariatric surgery certification. That is conjunction with the CONASEM and our college that is now by law. It's the law of the land. Every bariatric surgeon should be accredited and board certified in bariatric surgery. And I'm pretty sure that that's news to you guys, right, in the US. We'll touch upon that topic a little bit later. When we're talking about the facility, the law basically denotes what are the minimum requirements, but they're not bariatric specific. And then these are the bariatric specific accreditations that are available in Mexico. In Mexico, we mentioned the board certification. Now, in order to be board certified, your hospital has to be accredited by these guys. This is the Mexican version of the Joint Commission. That's where it becomes interesting, where the college has been pushing towards this type of accreditation. In order to be compliant with the law, a bariatric surgeon must be board certified, and in order to qualify for board certification, he must work in a hospital that's accredited by the Mexican version of the Joint Commission. That's what's available in Mexico, and I think it's extremely important that international surgeons know that this is what we strive for. Internationally, of course, we have SRC, and IFSO has a version, but I understand it's still not available in Mexico. Hospital accreditations are, again, we said Mexico. If anyone can, a Mexican, right? Hospital accreditations, we said that this is the Mexican version of the Joint Commission. It's run by the government, and it's intimately involved with the Mexican law. Not only is all the 3,200 variables that are measured by Joint Commission included in this version, but also all the variables that the Mexican law requires. And of course, internationally, the hospital can be accredited by either Joint Commission and or SRC. So what do? We've got 3 more slides to finish. When quality of care and patient safety, what do we do as international members, national members, all looking for the best outcomes for our patients? It's educate the consumer. Case in point, organic. Organic was unknown 10, 15 years ago. Suddenly you started educating the consumer about the benefits of eating organic. Now the law of the supply and demand started, and now anybody who grows organic is reaping the benefits, and the demand for organic is high sky. The same can be done with our society. So that's why what we're suggesting is that we create an international position statement on global bariatric healthcare, an international version where all these societies that represent thousands of surgeons globally come together to a new international guidelines that are bariatric specific. One of the most important things after analyzing what is available out there, it's got to be easy to understand, easy to find. I find these documents in journals, in websites that are society websites dedicated to the college or to the society, where patients can't find this information. It's not readily available. Where should it be displayed? It should be displayed on the official website's front and center. Easy to understand, easy to read. And most importantly, we were talking about this a couple of days with Dr. De Maria. There should be search engine optimization for our websites. Patients can't find these websites. The only thing they're going to find are the low-cost centers advertising surgery, and maybe we're in the 3rd, 4th page. So our societies should pay attention to SEO and branding and marketing the accreditations. When I receive patients that tell me about the Joint Commission accreditation, they're usually nurses and doctors. But a normal patient that's not associated to healthcare don't even know what JCI means. And that's wrong, because Joint Commission and every other accreditation should be marketing their product globally to increase the demand for that quality and outcome, safety outcomes. So with that, I'm going to leave you with an invitation to our IBC Oxford this April Congress, and I thank you for your attention.